I'm Wayne Carey, and this is The Truth Hurts.
Well, Wayne, good to see you again.
Good to be here, Anton. Geez, you look tired.
Who? What'd you call me?
Anton.
Is that my name, is it? Geez, I've only given you bloody 8 years to get it right, mate.
Well, what is it?
Ayrton.
Ayrton.
Yeah.
I've been calling you Anton for 8 years. Why haven't you ever pulled me up?
Oh, well, I'm too polite. You know Ayrton Centre, Formula One.
Mate, this show's called The Truth Hurts.
Yeah. Well,
Surely, so it's finally, after 8 years, you finally got the courage to tell me that I've been calling you the wrong name.
Yes, there is some truth, some good truth to start early today.
Why do you look so tired?
Well, yeah, funny you picked up on that. Obviously, you know I like my sleep. You know not to call me before 9:30 of the morning. Look, got a 4-month-old at home, little Ayla, and we're just making...
Who's that, Layla?
No, not Layla, Ayla. Just making a few changes to her sleep at the moment. And, yeah, we're not going that well. We're not going that well with the sleep. Does it get any easier? That's what I want to know. You've had three kids, I think, and they're all a bit more grown up. I feel like at the moment we're just in the trenches, just getting through it.
Oh, it's a little bit easier when they're all with their respective mothers. So so I get a little bit of a hand. But I tell you what a big first week. The reaction to the podcast, Anton, has been interesting, hasn't it? It was big. You know what I can't believe? Out of all the things that I said and all the stuff that we spoke about last week, one of the things and the biggest thing that they picked up on is that I pooped me pants on the first day of school, and they turned that into a headline. So I've had a few people within those respective families call me and say, "Why would you want to talk about pooing your pants on the first day of school?" I said, "I don't know. I just got on the podcast and just started talking, and it's something that came out."
It's funny what comes out. Did raise my eyebrows actually when you brought that up. But were you ever surprised by the response that you get? And I guess, does it feed you back to your time as a player? How do you handle that sort of stuff? Did you ever used to read the newspapers back when you played the game?
Nothing surprises me when it comes to the media, let's be honest, and been in it for long enough. But yeah, some of the things did surprise me. Did I read the newspaper? Only the good stuff. They were telling me how good I was. I picked it up and had it sitting on the table. But no, not generally. I think the one thing about, and you know, we're sitting here talking about particular things now, but when you get caught up in it. So if you look at the positives, I think you get carried away with yourself, and if you look at the negatives, you probably get down on yourself. So it's a bit like your form as a footballer. Yeah, I don't think you can ever really believe it's never as bad as what it seems, and it's never as good as what it seems. So that's generally my motto about how I respond to a certain reaction.
Well, that might be a good attitude when we go through some of the comments from the first show. You can write to us. The Truth Hurts, of course, on Spotify and Apple. I've just got a few of the comments here. The Duck, he's not perfect by any means, but gee whiz, I'll listen to the great man any day of the week. That's from AG17.
Well, thanks, AG17. Yeah, fair income. I'm not perfect. Thanks for letting me know.
I do have a bit of a soft spot for Wayne. He's been a bit of a dill in the past. I think on balance, he's not a bad human being.
So all of these are backhanded compliments, basically.
Good to hear the unfiltered truth that's not from the corporate machine. Very refreshing to hear from Carey in that space. Then I got one from Wish Wilson. The King and the Wool are a great combo. Jordan and Pippen like.
The Wool.
I'm obviously Jordan. You're
please. A little bit complimentary to you, being Pippen.
Mate.
Well, Luke Longley, I would have thought.
Yeah, shorter version and a slower version. Huge game of footy yesterday. Bit of a different one for you as well, because normally you'd been involved in some capacity in Anzac Day. How did you spend the day?
I was actually able to sit down and isn't it fantastic to be able to not go to a game? And it's been, 8 or 9 years where I've been to the last 9 Anzac Day games. Normally get up and go to the shrine. Didn't get up quite as early this time, so I didn't end up at the shrine. I was up paying my respects, but didn't actually go all the way in, given that there was so many people. What a perfect day it was, hey? And what a game. 95,000, a record at the MCG. Great game. So I loved every bit of it. But no, I was at a pub. I don't think that surprises anyone, does it? That I was sitting at a pub, able to watch the game for the first time amongst the mere mortals, and absolutely loved it. It was a great day. It
was. Essendon, of course, up at 3/4 time. Collingwood, as they have done so many times, have have come back from, I think it was 28 points down or something like that. Either of these teams surprised you? You know, the way that was played yesterday, this year, you know, Essendon maybe above expectations, but Collingwood have been really professional too.
Didn't have Collingwood in my top 8 this year, so to all the supporters out there. So that just goes to show you how much I know about footy. I thought with a tougher draw this year, given that they won so many close games last year, I didn't think they would play finals at all. They've proved me wrong. They have been winning games once again by small margins. So they've been out of games but been able to find a way to win. So says a lot about the group. And a young man is standing up right now for Collingwood called Nick Daicos. And once again, I'll put my hand up and say that, like some others, and I'll get smacked for this, but I'm more than happy to be smacked for it. I was sitting there over a year and what is it now, 6 games into his career. I thought, you know, playing off a halfback flank, everyone's, you know, talking about, yes, he's highly skilled, just like his dad. He's, by the way, his brother's a bloody good player too.
Very.
So highly skilled like their father, can do anything. They make the footy talk, great decision makers, speed, agility, all of those things, but off a halfback flank. So he's not in the coalface. And then all of a sudden, what does McRae do? Throw him on ball in the last quarter.
Well, that's the interesting part, isn't it? I reckon at 3/4 time, he had 30 touches at 3/4 time, but I, as an Essendon follower, I could have lived with his influence on the game. I thought De Goey had been more influential. I thought Scott Pendlebury had been more influential, and maybe even Steele Sidebottom. But then when he goes on ball and kicks 2 goals.
Well, I said this about Horn Francis last week. I said, you know, the fact, even though he was poor for 3/4, this isn't the case. This is a young man, once again, Nick Daicos, that has the ability to obviously be playing well, so he's getting plenty of the ball, but then to become a match winner. You know, there's so many accumulators out there. We might do a show on accumulators and match winners, because there's not too many match winners in our game. There's not. And Nick Daicos proved that he's a match winner in his second year of AFL footy, because that's what he did. He grabbed the game, kicked 2 goals in the last quarter. You know, he uses the ball so well. So for me, that puts him in an atmosphere, you know, that is what few players get to in their whole career, let alone in their second year.
I'm going to throw a few stats at you. I know you're not a huge stats man, but last year he kicked 7 goals in his 25 games. This year he's kicked 6 in 6, so he's almost added that string to his bow. Chris Judd is maybe the comparison that's being thrown around. Juddy had 50 goals in his first 2 years. So is Nick Daicos on Chris Judd's level in terms of what we've seen of young players?
You know my philosophy about how we rate players in different eras. Nick Daicos is playing in an era where there's very little intimidation. Players, there's no real body contact. I mean, we've seen in the last 10 years, we've seen a guy by the name of Dusty Martin win 3 Norm Smith medals because no one's put any time into him, and we saw what he can do if you don't do that. Nick Daicos is just basically playing on a halfback flank and just racking up possessions and using the footy, and he's not just doing that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not belittling what he's done, but to be able to do that with and no one. You know, even I think Stringer went up to him at the start of the game and bumped him, and that was the last bit of physical contact I saw anyone go to him. And so for me, if I'm playing against Collingwood, I don't care whether, yes, they do have other good players in their team that you have to put attention to, but this kid's now proven that if you don't give him the attention, that he's capable of taking the game away from you. So for me, it's now a physical game against Nick Daicos. That's certainly what I would be going out. If I was a coach against him for the rest of the year, I'd be making it more of a physical game for him.
It felt a bit token yesterday with Stringer, didn't it? In that we thought, maybe Essendon are going to go down that path. But if you're just going to bump someone for 30 seconds before the bounce, it's not really going to affect you, is it?
No, it's not. And people know the intimidation in the game has gone out of it a fair bit. But the other part of it is when you're the forward playing on the defender, you tend to go to the defender, and unless it's a real defensive role, then you all of a sudden think, oh, well, you know what, I'm free. Look at all the space I'm finding. Unfortunately, he reads it better than what you do. So he's winning the footy and you're not. That's how good he is.
Now, the other big talking point of the weekend was, of course, Carlton. 2 losses now for the Blues with Adelaide and St Kilda off the back of the draw against Richmond in the first game and 3 wins. But a few concerns for the Blues perhaps about the way they're playing. Where do you sort of sit with Carlton at the moment?
Well, for me, they've been the biggest disappointment of the competition for 2 years. And they've started this year in the same fashion as the last 2. I mean, I know they just missed finals last year, but I think they had the list. They had reasons last year. They had a few, although they didn't have a few. They had a lot of injuries. Whereas this year, if you go back to and I did a little bit of research on this.
You're not claiming
if
this.
You go back.
Oh, my goodness.
If you go back and have a look at their the second half of last year, Ayrton, they have been poor for a long time. They have beaten sides that are not great sides. The only side they've beaten how many games in the last 18?
This is the last time I'm going to share my good stuff with you.
Don't you say that you're claiming this. So they've beaten Geelong.
Geelong, yep. So 7 wins in their past 18 games.
Well, how do I know that?
Geelong was earlier this year when they were not really up and going. GWS twice, Freo, Essendon, West Coast, and North Melbourne. It's not a great form line, is it?
And the 2 teams they've beaten this year, no one had in the top 8 as well. So they're not travelling all that well. So the Blues for me are the biggest disappointment so far of this year. Now, by no stretch, they can still play finals footy. We know that, but not a great start for them. They've been really, really disappointing. So I'm really down on the Blues. I'm not sure, and the
way they play. Collingwood, them and Collingwood last year had this. They were both teams, really attacking teams, great to watch, and there seemed to be this momentum about them. And at the moment, they've gone back into their shells a little bit more.
Well, you think of the last round last year. That game was an absolute ripper where Collingwood pinched it. It was an unbelievable, and obviously Carlton missed out on the finals. It was the way they played, and then they stiffen up. That's what Carlton do. They stiffen up when that lack of ball movement, that fluency that you want, and that the good teams at Collingwood and even Melbourne and the Bulldogs, like when they get their game going. By the way, some of those sides have had their troubles with the way they move the ball at times as well. But any team out there that thinks that they can just chip the ball around and keep possession, Geelong changed their whole game plan last year and won the premiership off the back of it, albeit they've been successful prior in getting to finals and et cetera, et cetera. But forwards want the ball move quickly. Why do you think Jeremy Cameron is the player that he is? If he was at Carlton and they're moving the ball like they have done in the last couple of weeks, then very, very frustrating.
So are they being overcoached, or is this players being too cautious?
I have no doubt in my mind that Michael Voss wouldn't be telling them to play that way. I think that they'd be trying. They want to get the ball into their forwards. They want one-on-one contests. They want space for their forwards to work in. You don't. If you move the ball slowly and chip it around in the back half or through the middle or just go down the line all the time, then that's just made for defenders.
So the criticism of them last year was that they were getting in front in certain situations and they couldn't hold their lead. So maybe they've tried to implement this ability to control the game a little bit more. Is that the natural player reaction sometimes if you're getting that instruction? Maybe you can take it, that step.
Oh, I think it's a bit of I think some players, to be honest, when they get an easy possession behind the ball and they just want to chip it sideways, and they get a couple of possessions and they want to keep their percentage up with their disposals. It's just an easy kick, and that's why we love watching Collingwood play, because they go for that hard kick. They go for that. It's a 60-40. It really is, and it's high risk, but it's also high reward. And that's why we love watching the Pies play footy, because that's what we're all there to watch. We want to see teams take the game on.
There was one other footy topic I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm a little bit...
I don't want to go overboard with footy.
Well, I'm a little bit worried about this one because it's a bit closer to home for me. So I want you to say all the right things here. It involves Tasmania. Now, we're hearing at the moment the federal government's going to...
That's right, you're a Tasmanian, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
yes,
boy.
Proud Tasmanian, I'll have you know.
No, I love Tassie. I love the produce. That's what I love.
Not the people?
No, the people are fantastic. It's like a big country town. I know they probably don't like you saying that, but it is. They've great produce, beautiful wine, great beer, great food. I love visiting there. Would you like to live there? I would.
You would? That's good to hear. Okay.
I could live in Tasmania, no problems at all, because it's a short trip to Melbourne. Jump on a plane, you're here in 40 minutes. It's easy. You can even jump on a boat. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you can jump on a boat, so you can get across here pretty quickly. But in terms of a team, I've heard a lot of people have their opinions whether they can. The problem for me, and it always has been, is the Lonnie and Hobart. The Lonnie and Hobart, and as you know, they don't like one another.
They don't, but I think they would get behind a team.
So you've got to. Do you really think that? What if the stadium's in Hobart? Do you think the Lonnie people are going to travel to Hobart?
The team would be based in Hobart, but you would have 4 or 5 home games in Launceston a year, and so you're splitting it between the two.
And you think that they would all come together to support one Tassie team?
Well, at the moment, everyone in Tassie, because we don't have a team, it has their own AFL teams, but I think over a generation, over 10, 20, 30 years, then they'll have their supporters.
And by the way, this isn't a knock against Tassie. I know a lot of Tasmanians, including yourself, but obviously, you know, Richard, they've got one of the greatest players of all time. Well, a few of the greatest players of all time that have come from
Matthew
Tassie.
Richardson's from Devonport, where I'm from, actually.
Yeah.
So there you go. And Royce Hart, obviously. He's from further down
No,
south.
there's been great footballers. I thought Tassie should have been in the competition before the Gold Coast.
Yep.
I mean, it's simple. You've got a football state and you've got a non-football state. It's as simple as that. So, you know, and whether they need propping up, because Tassie eventually will need propping up. The AFL, and once again, depending on how the Tasmanians get behind this team and come together, unite for the good of the game and for the good of having a Tasmanian team, then there's still question marks for me. So I'm not sure. I'm actually sitting on the fence about Tassie. I'm not sure whether that, and if it does happen, what's the time frame? And then people are talking about teams, you know, relocating there, and obviously North Melbourne always gets brought up in that conversation. I'm not sure about Tassie.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure.
That's disappointing. I understand some of the reservations. I don't love the idea of a 19th team, but I also don't want a team relocated, and I don't see how the AFL they won't do that at the moment. I mean, North Melbourne too strong, financially. They've done really well off the field, secured a resurgence under Ross Lyon. That's not going to happen. Just on the player retention stuff. I mean, you've seen Gold Coast struggle to retain players at a place that you would probably view as being one where people would want to live. You know, you got the warm.
The only people that live on the Gold Coast, if you're not born on the Gold Coast, you're on the run. You're on the run.
You lived up there?
I lived up there for about 18 months. I was on the run. If you're from Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, or Tassie, or wherever you're from, and you move up there, you're running from something. You're running. You know, you've got debt, or you're running from a relationship, or whatever it may be. But like I said, I lived up there for enough time to meet people up there from those different states, and generally the story was pretty similar.
Yeah, okay. I've got a few mates who've just moved up there.
What are they running from?
I don't know. Maybe there's a few things I don't know about.
Yeah.
LIV Golf was massive on the weekend in Adelaide. It's the first really big event that golf tour has had, of course, backed by the Saudi money. There was all that controversy around whether the players should be taking that money. Greg Norman's been involved. Some amazing scenes, wasn't it? It was Chase Koepka who got the hole-in-one, and everyone just went absolutely nuts. Did you see it?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to bring it up before. How good is Adelaide for one? So we had the gather round, and then straight after that, the LIV Golf. What I love about it's got a little bit of Happy Gilmore about it, and it brings the crowd into the game a little bit more. And we saw some they're doing dances and having fun with the crowd, getting the crowd up and going before they play their shot. And generally, I mean, what we know about golf, a bit like tennis, everyone's you've got to be able to hear a pin drop before they play their shot, but they're actually getting everyone involved. They're showing personality, and they're making a shitload of money. So what? Of course, you jump ship. And the only ones that I think the only golfers that haven't jumped ship are those who've got $400 million in the bank anyway. The others, some of the others obviously haven't reached that level. They've won obviously big tournaments and they're the best players in the world, but they've still got to win to earn anywhere near that sort of money. Whereas, you'd be crazy not to, which sort of brings me back to a little bit about AFL footy and not only AFL footy, but rugby, but Australian sport, where everyone thinks that Australian athletes are overpaid, but I know for our population, it's very difficult to earn, a massive amount of money or more money than what they do. But for what they put in, underpaid, what you get off the ground.
Well, I thought about that with LIV. So you've obviously would have had hundreds of endorsement offers over the years. Did you ever consider where the money was coming from or who you were endorsing, or is it just who's giving me the most, who's got the best offer? Like, these guys have obviously weighed up the amount of money versus where it's come from. Did you ever think about that when you went through that stage?
Well, it's about, I guess, when it comes to an apparel sponsorship, for instance, then it gets down to what you like to wear. Before Nike, when Nike.
So they were big for you, weren't they? That was a big.
It was a big endorsement deal at the time.
And that was boots, was it? Mainly,
yeah, boots and apparel. But it was Ricky Nixon had been able to change. Not change their mind. He was going to take the AFL to court and say that players, if you're sponsored by say Diadora, which North Melbourne I think were at the time, then I should be able to wear Nike. So and he got that passed. So all of a sudden, other players could challenge their particular club and wear different boots and. So
what was that worth?
That was a change.
Interest. Are you able to share that with us? What was that worth? What was that Nike deal worth to you at that time?
Oh, I don't know, about 150 grand
and this
a year.
This is the mid 90s.
Yeah.
So in today's money, that's a really significant.
Well, I don't think players they don't get that money now, like apparel sponsorship now. I think the gun players, I'd say the Buddies and the Dusties, and I think Dusty's wearing Nike by the way now. But I don't know, they might get 40 grand, 30, 40 grand. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I don't think it's at the level that it was back in the 90s. So that part of the game has changed. And I'll tell you what else has changed, and for the better, but two amazing women here in Melbourne that have done unbelievably well. Now, social media wasn't around in the 90s. Thank God.
Good thing.
Good thing. Good, phones weren't around in the 90s either, so that was a good thing for me as well. But no, two amazing women. I talk of Judd and Nadia Bartel. And look, they get knocked by a lot of people. The herald son of one that is constantly into Nadia because of some mistakes that she's made. How about give this woman the credit that she deserves to forge a career? Obviously split up with Jimmy. Was with him through the tough times. Him as an AFL footballer, it's the most selfish sport. When you're a sports person at the top level, you're so selfish. Everything is about you. It's what you eat. It's how much sleep you get. It's where you can go. You're told to be here. You're told to be there. It really is a selfish sport. So what they go through as a partner of AFL footballer is quite a bit. So then for Beck and Nadia to build careers off the ground, I think is quite remarkable. And I know Nadia's made some mistakes, but who hasn't made some mistakes? But the way she bounces back from those mistakes, she's obviously a mother. Beck's a mother. The amount of money that they're making, you're talking about 150 grand from Nike. Yeah. These girls are making that for a post. I mean,
so these girls are outstripping their partners in.
100%, they're outstripping their partners. Now, both of those boys have retired now. No disrespect. Both Brownlow medalists, both superstars, both champions of the game, and their respective, well, Nadia not respective partner anymore, but those two girls are outshining and have outshone their superstar boyfriends, which that's where the game has changed and for the better. So back to your comment about, LIV Golf. If there was a LIV football competition out there, I'd tell you what, every good player would be jumping ship. Don't worry about that.
There was one moment that got me thinking. I haven't actually brought this up with you yet, but I saw Cameron Smith. He was walking off one of the greens, and someone offered him a shoey. He later did a shoey on stage, but he was still playing at the moment. It reminded me of the first time. I say I met you. I didn't actually meet you. I just started at Channel 9. I was probably early 20s. It was after an EJ Whitten Legends game. There was a function after and naturally at that stage, bright lights of Melbourne for me, and I'm looking around. Oh, there's the king. There's the duck. I went over and tried to play paper, rock, scissors with you. Had never met you, and you just completely. I didn't meet you properly for another 5 years.
What sort of flog walks up and wants to play rock, paper, scissors in the middle of a pub?
I just saw. Well, obviously, I'd had a couple of rums.
Are you serious? You walked up and wanted
said
to play
duck.
I don't remember.
I held my fist up, said duck, paper, rock, and you just looked at me and turned around and walked away.
Oh, you're a deal.
Yeah, I am. I haven't really matured either.
Hey, I tell you what I do have before we sign off today. We do have to send out our condolences to obviously Dean Holland passing in tragic circumstances. So condolences to his family. What a sad day. What a sad day for racing. The other thing I want to say in and around, the jockeys don't get the credit. I think jockeys are the most courageous sports people that we have in the world. I mean, they sit on an animal that has a mind of its own that weighs over 500 kilos. And while they're sitting on that animal, they have another 15 or more around them with their heads right next to, their head. They're being bumped. I mean, it's an unbelievably dangerous sport. And so, I think once again, they don't get the credit they deserve. And I want to send out, like I said, it's a sad day for racing. Really, really sad.
Well said, Wayne. One final thought before we go, just on the next episode, and one that...
Can you not call me Wayne, by the way?
What, Duck?
Yes,
I call you
Duck.
Wayne, don't I?
I only get Wayne when I'm in trouble.
When you get my name right, I'll get your name right. Before we go, really looking forward to the next episode, which we spoke about briefly last week, but you've now sat down with your former coach, Denis Pagan, really for the first time to talk about, your exit from the North Melbourne Footy Club. Why had you never spoken about this with Denis previously? Even privately, you'd never touched on it.
Never had a one-on-one conversation with him about it. And the only times I've seen Denis has probably been in a social setting or running into him with people, whether it be at a restaurant or somewhere like that. And to be honest, it's around shame, guilt, embarrassment. All of those emotions come to mind. So that's why it's never happened prior to now.
I'll look forward to that one. The Truth Hurts with Wayne, Carey and Denis Pagan. That'll be our next episode.